episode 40C of Creepypasta Narrations. Today's episode, Kingdom Hearts The Other Mix, Chapter 3, The Falling Cradle, done by Scourge the Hedgehog. The same content warning is applied to this and the previous two chapters done before. I hope you all enjoy. My legs were spasming. My eyes were wide. Sweat was falling from every single pore in my body. I vomited again. I could not believe what I was seeing. Rico just committed suicide. And addressed me directly. Me. Not Xehanort. Me. I was put in control of Xehanort again as he responded to my amusement commands this time. All I could really do was take in what the hell just happened. Now I know. This is no hack. I used the camera controls to look around. Sora's blood and guts from earlier were still there, reacting whenever Xehanort stepped towards them. Riku's corpse just lay there on the sand, as blood flowed from the wound made by the wound Sora stuck inside, and into the water by the shore. Oddly enough, it felt as though he was looking at Xehanort the whole time. But I chalked it up to how he fell. Things started up again. The blood that entered the water tainted it, as red coloring started taking the place of the vast ocean slowly. I decided not to stick around to see what else happened and moved Xehanort towards the dock, of where Sylvie usually sits in the original Kingdom Hearts. The wood holding the walkway together was broken, as the structure bent down like a pair of stairs, a la Enters the World from the original Kingdom Hearts game. I moved to Xehanort's further down the mainland, near the treehouse area. This was shocking. Throughout the whole area, I saw what appeared to be intestines or some sort of organic material strewn across the rock face, all across the wooden docks that must have survived whatever happened here. I ignored it, for the sake of my sanity. Moving closer to the secret place. As he ignored advances to the sacred place, the screen begins to crackle with static for each step he takes. By the time he was directly near the cave entrance, the whole screen begins unstaticky, finally becoming nothing but static. Entering another loading screen, the static remains throughout. The static finally begins to subside as I see him standing by the exit to the cave, parallel from the store. But I immediately freaked out. The rock face was replaced with organic muscle-looking matter. It was most likely just red color modification, while the sketches, such as the one on a Sora or in Kairi, for example, were replaced by real-life worlds similar to the one I saw in the pause menu, lowered in size and apparently just pasted on the texture itself. All the photos shown were of people being killed and taken apart in gruesome and grotesque ways. Many of the depictions involving dismemberment. One depicted a little kid, at least 7 years of age, whose upper body skin was removed in the shape of a t-shirt, and he is seen staring at the camera in sorrow. The skin was discarded near him, implying that the cameraman was the perpetrator. I almost dropped the PSP in my hands and I saw it. The other photos were worse, even worse. So gruesome that I dare not describe them lest I vomit again. I had seen her running up the door, only for the door to begin and to move away from him. Must be intended, because the longer I spent running towards the door, the more it moved away. I tried running back towards the exit, only for it not be there at all. It was a one-way road. After a time of running towards the door fruitlessly, a D-Link gauge finally appeared by Xehanort's HP gauge. Now I'm worried. So far, something in this game happens for a reason. Despite the trembling in my fingers, I cautiously pressed the right directional stick against the D-list as it came up. There was only one option. A string of binary. I knew only one thing. It was a word written in binary code. What it meant, however, I had no clue. With a shuddering sigh, I pressed the X button. At that moment, a voice echoes out from an unknown area as everything around Xehanort grows dark. When the wind blows, the cradle will fall. The floor disappears underneath Xehanort as he begins to fall. Another loading screen starting up. Throughout the loading screen in process, Xehanort is falling into an endless abyss. Another voice, this one sounding just like Riku's. Down will come baby, cradle and all. After that verse of the nursery rhyme, I started to hear agonized screaming of random origin and random pitches echoing in the background of wherever Xehanort was. I started to get nervous again. How worse could this get? Stupid question. The loading signal disappears after 1 minute of silence as Xehanort finally lands. This was the awakening. Jutting from the platform I was on is seen a walkway. The walkway was made of a small pasted-in decapitation photograph, arranged in the shape of a curving path downwards. This spelled trouble in capital letters. Whatever this game was trying to tell me wasn't in a hurry. It was almost goading me to seek the answer out on my own. But I had come this far, endured too much shit, saw too much horror, not to know the answer. I deserved the answer. I moved Xehanort closer to onto Photograph Road, deciding against using the camera to examine them. I have seen enough shit in my mind for years to come. Once he reaches the first tile and begins walking across, I hear screaming in the background. I stop, then take another step. Another scream. This one of a higher intensity. Breathing hard but persistently, I have Xehanort run at full speed down the path. The screams practically bleed my ears out, but eventually I make it across the path and onto the awakening from the character selection screen. There they were, Terra, Ventus, and Aqua, still impaled on the spikes from before. It looks as though the blood on the pieces has dried. I used the camera controls to find myself standing on Terra's piece of the awakening. I turned Xehanort around to see that the footpath pathway has disappeared. I was stranded, and that's when I heard the sounds. Oh God, the sounds! I hear squishing and moving, as I see that the corpses attached to spikes begin to rise around the place. I used the camera controls to look around in first-person view. Ventus was simply moving around in place, while Aqua's head was spinning in place over and over, exorcist style. The worst one yet was Terra. I see Terra's body place its hands around the spike, stabbing it and proceeding to climb. Or should I say scoot or shamble? Up the spike, near the tip. Once it got off the tip, it fell to the ground right next to Xehanort. With a grunt of effort, the body raises itself and stands upright. Xehanort jumps backwards beyond my control. The camera began to focus on Terra, cutscene style. The time has come, Andrew, Terra says. I hear more squishing sounds as Aqua and Ventus finally find their way off their spikes and are now facing Xehanort. This was it. Whatever the reason, and I'm playing this was right here in front of my eyes. What was eerie was that it was only their bodies contorted. Aqua was missing an ear, one of Ventus's eyes was missing. Aside from that, everything about them was perfectly normal. Especially Terra. Aside from a stomach wound, he didn't have a scratch on him. It was almost as if nothing had ever happened to them. Maybe this was a symbol? The camera focuses on Aqua and Ventus, looking at me through the camera. When the wind blows, Ventus says, the cradle will fall, Aqua says. The camera switches to Terra, and down will come Andrew, cradle and all, Terra says. Finally, I get pissed and yell off my head. I was desperate, scared, and concerned. What's the cradle? What's the wind? What the hell are you guys? I yell. I know they won't respond. It's just a game. But I couldn't hold it off any longer. Why am I playing this? Aqua and Ventus look at each other, then back at me. They both summon their Keyblades. The camera switches back to Terra, who summons his Keyblade. I'm scared now. It felt as though they were about to come off the PSP and hack me to bits. The camera switches to Xehanort, who summons his own Keyblade in response. A braceletting screen persists as another dark photograph briefly flickers on screen. It was too fast for me to see, but it looked familiar to me for some reason. The tune to the nursery rhyme Cradle begins to play in the background. The screen ends as another information bar hovers over the screen, and with a message similar to the one that was written on the enclosed note. Maintain the cradle. See the void. Terra immediately rushes towards Xehanort as I gain control of him. I have Xehanort guard against Terra's attack. Again, use Counter Hammer, Terra's counter command in the original game. The attack does a lot of damage to both Terra's hit points and his body. The forces the hammer pushes one of his arms off as it falls into the void below. Terra continues his attacks as I proceed to repeat the counter hammer strategy over and over until his hit points was at its final gauge. Xehanort guards another attack, while I get a glance at my enemy. His body was particularly destroyed at this point. Terra's arrows were gone, as well as his left arm. His sledge was mangled while his armor is cracked. The stomach wound that he had when I got to this place was expanded beyond repair, and his right eye was gone. It was like something out of an autopsy photo. I resisted the urge to fond as I used one of the commands Xehanort had in his command deck. Dark Haze. Xehanort cloaks himself in darkness and rushes at Terra, running him, well, what's left of him, through with the Keyblade. At this point, the scene zooms on Xehanort and Terra as it receives a prompt to press X repeatedly. I do so as it switches to a reaction sequence. Xehanort pours his sword out of Terra's body as Terra tries to grab his Keyblade. Xehanort then knocks Terra against the head with the guard of his weapon as Terra finally falls onto his knees. He's spent. Xehanort then lifts his Keyblade into the air, and with an insane chuckle that sounds suspiciously like a man from real life, swung his weapon. Terra's head graphically comes off at the seams. It's as it rolls off the platform the two are on and falls into the abyss. The area where the head once stood began to explode with blood, and small parts of the entire body slumps to the ground lifelessly. Xehanort chuckles again, giving the body a push with his light boot. The body rolls off of the platform into the chasm to join the head that adorned it. This was becoming really offensive. Kingdom Hearts was not some bloody samurai action flick. It was a children's game. I regained control of Xehanort as Ventus drops off his piece of the awakening and engages Xehanort. Right away. The counter-hammer strategy doesn't work with Ventus. He was way too fast. The only thing to do was to beat fire with fire. I used another one of the commands, Ars Solum, to attack Ventus after he had guarded Fuse's attacks. Xehanort assaulted Ventus with slash after slash of his Keyblade, as I saw how damaging they were. Finn's hit point gauge had been reduced to its final gauge already, but that wasn't the half of it. No. His body was already mutilated by the attack Xehanort had used. Slash marks adorned his body, while I see his remaining eye is hanging out of its socket. The stomach wound he had when I reached this place was expanded and eaten through so much that his spine was now visible to the naked eye. His arms are just bones now. All the tissue and flesh had been shaken off during Xehanort's flash frenzy. The blood from the muscles flooded the platform, and the two were on as Ventus advances on Xehanort again. I was desperate to end this nightmare as fast as I could, so I used Dark Haze as I had dodged on his attacks. The attack ran Ventus through as another prompt came up, another reaction sequence starting. Xehanort removes this weapon from Ventus's body as he jumps into the air, slamming his keyblade into the platform. Sharp masses of rock pierce Ventus's body as one of them pokes through his arm, the arm falling into the platform. The rest of the body falls and gets itself caught in another rock form. The tip of the rock finds itself established through the stomach wound, so it does little damage. Ventus tries to struggle free, but cannot, since his spine was serving as support for the form. The game prompts me to press X again. As I do so, after I succeed, I immediately wish I hadn't. Xehanort raises his left hand. Covered in darkness, as the rocks bend themselves to his will. The main one, and going further into Finn's stomach wound. Xehanort then raises and moves his hands, causing the rock forms to twist and mutate themselves as the rest of them pierce various parts of Finn's body. A clap of Xehanort's hands finally stops them. While Xehanort keeps his hands clamped together, Ventus grins in agony, his voice distorted for some odd reason. The nursery tune in the background plays faster as Xehanort spreads his arms into the air. The rock form explodes into a shower of light, as Finn's body is ripped apart by the pressure. Parts and blood drip down from the chasm into the chasm and below as Xehanort picks up something resembling brain matter, tossing it downwards. I regain control as Xehanort as Aqua jumps onto the platform. She enters combat stance and begins walking around the platform and peace cautiously while waiting for me to make the move. She's a mage, so launch distance attack weren't a good idea. I use R Solemn as my first move. Aqua manages to dodge the attack completely as she launches shards at Xehanort. I managed to dodge all of the shards but one. And then I feel it. A sharp pain in my mind just when the shard connected. I was worried for my life, but I had to keep on going. I have Xehanort attack with a 3-hit combo, interrupting a possible thunder spell from Aqua. At that moment, I seized my chance and used R Solemn. The attack, like the others, does major damage, sending Aqua's HP plummeting to its final gauge. I tried to use Dark Haze to follow up, but she predicts this and cartwheels out of the way, the attack failing. She then sends a fireball at Xehanort, which I managed to send flying back at her. It connects, flames covering her body, while she grabs her head and begins screaming in agony, her voice distorted as well. I seize the chance and then finally attack her with a 3-hit combo. Her HP dives down and Arthur receives another X prompt and another reaction sequence. Xehanort puts his hands directly through the flames and picks up Aqua in a bear hug. He presses her body hard as I hear a loud crunching sound. I know what had happened. He'd broken her spine. Next, he lifts her up into the air with both hands and starts to pull her body from both sides. A final scream from Aqua is heard as her body is finally ripped into two symmetrical halves. After waiting for the blood and gore to fall from the halves, Xehanort laughs and throws the two halves into the pit. The camera then enters cutscene mode, while I myself take the time to vomit all over the floor. Xehanort begins to cackle madly, his voice different. He sounded like a man in his mid-30s. The audio directly ripped or recorded from whoever made this. At that moment, more gruesome real-life decapitation photos flood the screen in rapid succession. I began breathing heavily again as I wait for them to pass. A man hooked to a machine, having his jawbone ripped in half by opening his mouth way too wide. A woman tied to a conveyor belt, a meat grinder in front of her. A man strapped to an electric chair on fire from the electricity, all of the Green Mile. A little boy having his intestines pulled out of his stomach as his eyes were kept open by clamps, forcing him to watch. And others way too horrific to describe on this account. Finally, the photos pass. As Xehanort begins to walk towards the edge of the platform he was on, I have a good feeling that I know what he's gonna do. He takes his keyblade and turns it on himself, just like Igriku had done earlier. He stabs himself with the keyblade as it stays on his body. He turns to look at me through the camera. The bow has broken, Andrew, Xehanort says in his normal voice. Down will come Andrew, cradle and all. The hairs on my neck stood on end as Xehanort finally falls off the platform, giving himself over to the abyss he had discarded the others in. Another gruesome photo plasters itself onto the screen as the tune on the background continues to play. It depicted the remains of a boy's body that had been shattered due to the long fall. The brain matter and blood were sprouted along what looked like grass. That's when I see it. Across from the body was the broken remains of a baby's cradle. The photo then disappears and as another takes its place. It's the same picture, but shot from a different angle. A tree branch is visible. Oh, and next to the branch was a body's face. It's my face. With a loud scream, I throw my PSP across the room as it hits the wall with a loud wham. The parts where the console fly around and land in separate areas while the screen lands nearby. I noticed that despite the impact, it's the only thing that was completely intact, and it looked like there was still something on the screen. My curiosity got the better of me as I got up next and wadded through the aisle vomit. Finally ended up next to the screen. It was still on, and I saw. The note ends here. 2 days after the incident, local police agencies found the remains of the body of Andrew Doe by a tree outside his house. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death has been due to an impact that crushed all his internal organs. Since there was no witnesses and no evidence to support the possibility of murder, the case was deemed a suicide and closed indefinitely. 2 years prior to this incident, a 30-year-old man was arrested for killing his 13-year-old son by tying him to the ends of a wooden cradle and pushing off of the roof of their home. The child died upon impact with the ground. The father was given the death penalty. The mother of the child disappeared and was never found.